Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down absolutely everything you need to know about legally getting behind the wheel in the live free or die state. You know, if you're a new driver, or maybe you're a parent trying to help a teen navigate this whole system, you probably already know the rules can feel kinda overwhelming. It's a lot. But hey, don't worry. We're gonna lay out the exact step-by-step roadmap to success right here.
So ready to hit the road and start your driving journey in New Hampshire? We're going to cover all the requirements today, from that very first nerve-wracking practice drive all the way to passing the official road test. But right up front, I got to tell you, there's a massive, seriously surprising twist in how New Hampshire handles its newest drivers compared to almost everywhere else in the country. Stick around, because we'll get to that in just a second.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, eligibility and the non-permit. Then, supervised practice driving rules. Third, application and required documents. Moving on to vision and knowledge tests. Then fees and associated costs. And finally, the youth operator license. By the end of this, I promise, the whole DMV process is going to make perfect sense.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, eligibility and the non-permit.
All right, here is the massive gotcha I mentioned earlier, and this trips a lot of people up. New Hampshire doesn't actually issue a physical paper learner's permit for passenger vehicles. No way, right? It's true. While teens in other states have to study, take a test, and wait in some notoriously long DMV line just to get a piece of paper that says they can practice, New Hampshire actually lets you skip that initial DMV line entirely. Talk about living free.
So you're probably wondering, how do you prove you're allowed to drive? Well, it's all about your age. In New Hampshire, 15 and a half is the exact legal age you can start practicing on public roadways. But wait, you can't just hop in the car empty-handed. Even though you don't need a state-issued permit, you absolutely must carry physical proof of your age with you in the vehicle whenever you practice. Literally, this means having your original birth certificate or a valid passport sitting right there in the car with you.
Now, because there's no official paper permit to regulate new drivers, New Hampshire relies on some pretty strict rules during this phase. That brings us to Section 2, Supervised Practice Driving Rules.
First off, you gotta have a qualified mentor with you at all times. This supervisor has to be a licensed driver who is at least 25 years old, or it can be your parent or legal guardian. And they have to be awake, alert, and sitting right next to you in the front passenger seat, no sleeping in the back. Also, you can only practice in a non-commercial vehicle. But what's really interesting is that final requirement. Since you don't actually hold a state-issued learner's permit, out-of-state driving is strictly off-limits. Basically, other states won't recognize your right to practice without a physical permit, so you absolutely must keep all your practice sessions entirely within New Hampshire state lines, period.
Alongside all this practice, if you're under 18, you're legally required to complete a state-approved driver's education program. It's pretty comprehensive. The state mandates exactly 30 hours of classroom instruction, 10 hours of behind-the-wheel training with a certified instructor, and 6 hours of in-car observation. Oh, and here's a pro tip. You can actually enroll in these courses slightly before you start driving, starting at 15 years and 9 months of age. It's a great way to get a head start.
Once you've completed driver's ed and hit the big 1-6, it's time for the paperwork phase. Moving on to Section 3, application and required documents.
But wait, before you're rushed to book that DMV appointment, you need to hit this magic number, 40. You must have a completed driving log showing exactly 40 hours of supervised practice driving. Building a structured practice schedule with your mentor is an absolute game changer here. And actually, it's incredibly important to note that at least 10 of these 40 hours must be completed at night. Why? Well, it ensures that new drivers get real experience with reduced visibility before they're allowed to drive on their own.
All right, here's your master checklist for the DMV. Showing up without even one of these precise documents can cause some seriously frustrating delays, and nobody wants that. You'll need your application for driver license, that's Form DSMV 450. You need proof of your identity, like the birth certificate or passport we talked about, plus your social security number. Now, if you want a real ID-compliant license, which is definitely crucial for domestic flights nowadays, you'll need 2 proofs of New Hampshire residency. Think utility bills, things like that. Also, if you're under 18, don't forget to bring the signed parent or guardian authorization certificate, your fully signed 40-hour driving log, and finally the original green driver education completion certificate. Just have all these organized in a folder and you'll breeze right up to the testing counter.
Now we enter the testing gauntlet that awaits all applicants once their paperwork is officially approved. Section 4, Vision and Knowledge Tests. The very first hurdle you'll face is the vision screening.
Basically, New Hampshire standard requires you to read the 20/40 vision line, both with your eyes together and separately. Simple enough, right? But if you need glasses or contact lenses to achieve that 20/40 vision, the examiner is going to place a restriction code on your license. This simply means it's legally required for you to wear your corrective lenses anytime you're behind the wheel.
Next up is the written test. And the absolute crucial point to remember here is this number, 32. You must answer at least 32 out of 40 questions correctly on a 40-minute computerized knowledge test. That's an 80% passing grade. This test covers the whole shebang, from traffic laws and safe driving practices to identifying road signs just by their shape and color. It's entirely based on the official New Hampshire driver's manual, so honestly, studying that manual cover to cover and taking a bunch of online practice tests is for sure your best path to success. If you fail this one, you have to wait a mandatory 10 days before you can even try again, so study up.
So, just to recap the flow, here's the exact order of those 3 hurdles. Once the vision and knowledge tests are officially out of the way, you face the final boss, the practical road skills test. For this 15 to 20-minute driving evaluation, you actually have to provide the vehicle yourself, and it's got to be safe, fully registered, and legally inspected. During the ride, the examiner will be grading you on your vehicle control, your general safety habits, and how well you navigate intersections and traffic. Deep breaths, you've got this.
Okay, so how much does all of this actually cost? Let's talk money. Section 5, Fees and Associated Costs.
Here's some genuinely good news. Because there's no paper learner's permit, there is absolutely no permit fee. You only pay when it's finally time to get your license. A standard non-Real ID license is $50, and a Real ID compliant license is $60. But if you're under 21, New Hampshire issues what's called a youth operator license. The cost for this is uniquely calculated at $10 per year until you turn 21. So let's do the math. If you get your license right on your 16th birthday, you're paying for 5 years until you're 21. That makes it a grand total of $50. All right, you've passed the tests, you've paid your fees. What exactly happens next? Let's get into Section 6, the Youth Operator License.
If you're under 21, your new license is going to be a vertically oriented cart. That just makes it super easy for law enforcement to identify. Now, if you're under 18, this youth operator license comes with a few strict legal restrictions designed purely to keep you safe while you're still gaining experience. First up, there's a curfew. You cannot drive between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. Second, you can never have more people in the car than there are actual seatbelts, no piling in. And third, for the first 6 months of having your license, you are limited to a maximum of 1 non-family passenger under the age of 25. The only exception to that rule is if a licensed adult who is 25 or older is riding along in the car with you.
Let's zoom out and see how this builds into your overall timeline. At 15.5, boom, the journey begins with your supervised practice. Then at 16, assuming you finished your driver's ed and logged those 40 practice hours, you are eligible to test for your youth operator license. Once you finally celebrate your 18th birthday, those curfews and passenger restrictions we just talked about automatically lift. And finally, when you hit 21, your youth operator license expires, and you are officially issued a standard, horizontally oriented adult driver's license. It's like a rite of passage.
While we strive for accuracy, always consult the official New Hampshire DMV website or contact local DMV offices directly for the most current information and requirements regarding learner's permits. State laws and fees can definitely update, so it's always smart to double-check things before your appointment. So now that you know the exact roadmap to legally getting behind the wheel in the Granite State, I'm going to leave you with this. Where will your very first New Hampshire drive take you?